Yes, good evening, fight fans. Red Corner Boxing, Mr. Neutral with you tonight, along with two special guests. Tonight's Riyadh season episode 3. But before we get to that, we have to shout out our sponsors, easystorage.com. Go to them for all your local nationwide needs in that department. The link in the bio in this program. And Octagon Blog on X, our proud new sponsors, and some of the jackets and winter and summer jackets that they produce. We absolutely look at that Red Corner Boxing's very own, and they do a wonderful range. So if there's anything that you like, give Octagon Blog a wee look on X, and contact him and see what he can do for you. We've got our own clothing line to announce in July, which we're very proud to do, and that will come in the meantime. But it's episode 3 of Riyadh Seasons, a different angle with Mr. Neutral, and this is a Reuters special. Now, just to recap episodes 1 and 2. Episode 1, that was about the concept of Riyadh Season and how it started, and the Saudi royal family and their vision for tourism and entertainment in the country as realised by Saudi 2030 vision. We talked about how Turki al-Sheikh become responsible for the whole of GEA, not just boxing and sports, but the whole entertainment industry in the country. Massive task as chairman. And we talked about how he developed the boxing side into what we call Riyadh Season from 2024. But, let's talk about episode 3. It's called Control. And since Turki al-Sheikh, the chairman of GEA, who's responsible for the whole of Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030 and his introduction of Riyadh Season in boxing from October to the March in the kingdom, will host some of the biggest fights in decades. And from January 24 to present, GEA has delved into the Kingdom's Sovereign Wealth Fund, which is also called the PIF, to assert his standing in boxing, to initiate his control of the sport. Buyouts of Ring Magazine, BoxRec, and a stake in the Zone would enable Turki al-Sheikh to operate off-season as a private entity. That seemed to answer the critics. They won't last long in boxing, and he'll get bored of losing money. Yet still he is today. GEA and Turki al-Sheikh are not only still operating, but evidently are the go-to power brokers, as seen recently with the potential fights being made with top US stars like Devin Haney and Brian Norman, Boots and Shakur. So the US stars are no longer looking to their traditional promoters to organise their careers. So, gentlemen, how has GEA, Turki al-Sheikh, got to this level of control in boxing? And I'll come to you first, Brett. Welcome. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, hello, mate. Thanks for having me on again. It's plain and simple. Money. money has given him the power to bring those all-important promoters to one table. If you think about it, it's not just Eddie and Frank that he's bringing to the table. He's bringing them all to the table now. They all want a piece of the pie, which makes it lucrative for them to listen to what he's got to say. And if he, as we've seen, he's tried to get rid of a few boxers over. And they very generally, maybe not Canelo, but most of them always come back and say sorry for their outburst. And it's because that's the level of control he's got now. You want to do it, you play by my rules and you play by my money.
Do you think it's anything narcissistic?
Because there has to be, don't there? Like, the whole idea behind the card at the prison and things like that. It's all what I want, I will do. That the Times Square card completely fell on its ass, and that was all his doing. He wanted to to do that, but put powerful faces in there with no atmosphere. Hence why we saw some of the most boring sparring. Like, if you want to see better sparring than that, I'll show you better sparring from these 15-year-old kids that keep walking in our gym. Like, that's, you know, and ultimately that one completely backfired on him. But the bottom line is, of course, it's narcissism. But at the same time, though, you know my thoughts on it. I'm not going to bite this hand just yet, because I'm still, you know, my lips are wet from the fights that he's telling me he's going to make, or for the fights that we know he'll make because he wants to see them.
Yeah, it's weird that you mentioned that. But is it a case of inevitably all of this is just playing into his hands because of the state of the sport?
Yeah, of course, yeah, because he come in at a time where we weren't seeing the main fights, were we? There wasn't the commercial value. Well, I'm not coming unless you pay me ridiculous amounts of money. And obviously, we've heard the story that he said to Chris Eubank Jr., didn't he? He said, put your figure down on the piece of paper, and Chris he put his figure down, and he went, "Yep, no problem." And to the point of Junior was like, "I wish I would have put more down." So. Yeah, he's coming at a time where his money's going to make him extremely powerful. I'm a massive fan of the fights that he's made, but I'm not a huge fan of how it's like he's messing with some of the models that have always worked. Now, the biggest concern, I suppose, will be what happens at the domestic level, where with this big money at the top, there's going to be no money at the bottom for these domestic fighters. You would see, unless somebody sees a niche. And I'll tell you, somebody that did see a niche in the market. And I don't like him as a fighter, but Jake Paul saw a niche in the market because, you know, Turkey's not taking up the women talent. And Jake went, okay, I can promote that, and I can pay these women well. So, you know, long way around of saying it. His power all stems from the fact that he's got the money, and he does sit in his. I liken it to when I was young and I used to play Championship Manager, and you used to go on the cheat edit, and you used to put all the best players in your team. Well, he's got the money now that he puts all the best players in his team and he tells them what to do.
Absolutely. Before I get to you, I just want to go to the comments. Big up Joshua. He says it's thoughts on Benavidez versus Yard. We'll come to that in a bit, Joshua. Hawkeye Ringside Live. Good afternoon, Boxing Man, and good evening, Mr. Neutron and Ra. Hawkeye, good evening to you, sir. Welcome once again. The 505, big up, my boys. We're locked in. Thank you, 505. Check out the watch party coming up July 19th in London for that. Josh is going on about Benavidez again. We will get you to that, Josh. Your Red Corner Boxing says about the money. And it is going to be fireworks in November. He has put what's potentially going to be a great card. Yes, we'll get to all them. Great stuff. Right, Ra, you've heard what Brett has said. Is there anything you want to either add or highlight or anything like that to what that, or it's been discussed already?
I really think all this talk of takeovers and controlling the sport, it's very premature. We've already seen, despite the enormous amounts of money he's throwing at the sport, we've seen resistance to him. I take on board Brett's point that Canelo's initial resistance was worn down. But it's interesting, some of our viewers there are talking about Benavidez. Something happened when he visited Riyadh for the Beterbiev Bivol rematch. Shortly after that, Turki Al-Sheikh made a big point about the fact that he's not going to bid for the WBC mandatory, and off Benavidez disappeared with the WBC belt. We've since seen people like Fury express unhappiness that he didn't get decisions over in Riyadh. Although, again, today, as he patched things up with Turki Al-Sheikh in that regard, it might seem like it. But what I'm sure of, though, is that the traditional power brokers in the sport are not going to just let themselves get overrun by this guy. What they will do is they will milk the cow for as long as possible, while simultaneously still keeping one foot in their own sort of independent camp. And we've seen it, even Uncle Frank. You look at how he's shoring up the heavyweight division. He's putting on a couple of these big stadium events independently of Riyadh. Again, if you know people in the industry, some of them aren't, they're not going to go and just sort of accept, that they're going to bend the knee to this new power broker. At Bob Arum recently, didn't one of our American colleagues ask him, are you now planning on cooperating with the PBC to counter or to provide alternative big fights to what Riyadh season? And he replied quite curtly, correct. So you can bet your life, Arum, having been in the game for as long as he has, that there's going to be a lot of ego in there, and these guys are not going to just accept sort of subservience to these guys. No, they will cooperate when necessary, when it benefits them. But long term, there is no way they're going to let this newcomer sort of control the show, as it were. And that might be ultimately their undoing, because without the ability to get total control, you'll never really be able to sort of bring in the sort of numbers. I think he's really underestimated how popular boxing is based on what a handful of big superstars can draw. All of these events are still, losing a lot of money. We've already touched on it in the previous show as to how few people are going to travel there. It's a long way off from any sort of control. This is still a short-term sort of bit of success for Riyadh season. So I definitely see there will be pockets of resistance, and eventually they might fade out of the game as a major power.
Yeah, I get what you're saying there. Brett, let me ask you a question after you, off the back of what you've just heard Ras say there. Is there a measure of control that oh, you still there? Oh, we've lost him. I'm just about to ask Brett, is there a measure of control though at this point when you've got top boxers going straight to Turkey instead of their traditional promoters? Is there not an element of control there?
Well, you would think that a lot of the time it's Turkey going over the promoters. It's rather than the boxer going over their promoters, because he thinks now he can pick up the phone and put one phone to AJ, one phone to Fury, and say you two need to fight, and all this type of stuff. And I think you're right. I mean, as you know, I'll stand by what I say. I'm enjoying the ride. I'm definitely in for a little bit more here. But I think the more and more you open it up, in terms of course, he's just a powerful man, and he doesn't understand the way that the ethics and the etiquette works in boxing. When you're talking about someone like Bob Arum that's been doing it for years and years and years, and Warren, I thought Warren was done 3 years ago, if I'm honest. I thought he was done, and then he's managed to turn himself around. So these promoters, maybe they get together at some point and they start to bring it back round and play it on their terms a little bit. But right now, I think, yeah, of course, he's going to go straight to Teofimo Lopez. He's going to go to Haney. He's going to go to Shakur. He's going to go to Tyson. I mean, say what you want. I think Usyk beats Dubois, but I'm absolutely flabbergasted that they're dropping the Fury Usyk fight 3 in. I think that's extremely disrespectful when Dubois is on the hitter that he's on right now. And again, that just shows his tact a little bit. It's like, I'm not really bothered about that fight, but I do want this fight.
Yeah. Go the next point about that is Turkey Al Sheikh gonna face a rebellion at any point from promoters? The more this practice of boxers actually bypassing their managers and promoters, even you got Bill Haney. I know he asked for his son, but you got these fathers who are now openly talking on YouTube and all that, and they're telling you they're basically having straight conversations with the big man himself. So at some point, is there going to be this collective that will get together that will say, look, we need to have a word here.
It's interesting. I can't remember when it was, but it was a couple of months back. But I tended to see Eddie's tune change a little bit when Turkey Al Sheikh came up, and I think it was when they were on about bringing Dana in, and Eddie was like, "Well, okay, we'll still continue to do what we're doing." So at first, Eddie was like all googly eyed, and I need this and I need that. The bottom line is they're multi-millionaires, and they've got an amazing business model, both Matchroom and Queensberry. So the fact that they're all working together now, then there might be okay. Let's see what you've got then, Dana White. Let's see if you can take on all these big fights. But what they'll have to be brave, Mr. Neutral, because I tell you what, there'll be a mass exodus of fighters. They're going to have to be really brave and kind of sit there and go, let's wait for them to come back to us, because they will come back to us. But for now, they'll just be a clear out of the stable.
Absolutely. Ra, can you ever see a scenario where Turkey Al Sheikh, should he face a rebellion of any kind from promoters, that knowing how the country works, could this man form his own stable and form his own company, or would he buy out Matchroom?
Well, I mean, he's already tried with this. Is it Zuffa Boxing that he's calling this operation with?
Yeah.
Dana White. Like I said, the example I used before about what Bob Arum said about working with PBC, that rebellion's already there. And like I said, and as Brett alluded to, what Matchroom have said and what Queensberry are doing. Yeah, they're being diplomatic about it, but I've no doubts in my mind that the rebellion is already sort of underway. It's just not vocalized as such. More importantly, I don't even think he has total control over the fighters' sentiments. As I said, look at how Benavidez changed his tune after going there. People like Shakur and Teo, despite the enormous amounts of money and offer, they've actually been insulting towards Turkey. And, you'd think almost to have burnt their bridges there. So,
right,
sorry, go on, Brett.
You know the Benavidez rumor. Was the rumor that he got there? There was a meeting and Benavidez just turned back around and got on the plane and went again. Was that the rumor?
No, I think he actually went to the show.
Right.
I don't know if he left before the final bell.
Right.
Because I think the idea was he'd get in the ring so that they could talk about him fighting the winner, which obviously turned out to be Bivol. But he didn't do the face-off, so he left before the end of the show.
It was a definite show of defiance against it, though, wasn't it? It was absolutely. A definite. You're not going to puppet me. You're not going to tell me what I'm doing. I'm the fighter. So it was brave from Benavidez, very brave.
Exactly that. Tank Davis has continued to be resistant. So, even from the fighters, there is going to be resistance. Canelo initially said, "I don't like the way he approaches things," and I can foresee a time where he is just like any other promoter, and fighters and their managers will look at their way of doing things and say, "Well, actually, you know what? It's only good for short-term money, but long-term development for us, it isn't that good because this guy expects us to fight every 3 months in really hard fights. That's not sustainable in this sport. It never has been. I mean, not since the 1800s when there was no such thing as healthcare. But I think that resistance has already begun. Neutral and answer the question from fighters as well as the promoters.
What do you say, Brett?
Yeah, boys, I've got to jump after this, and apologies for the short period that
problem.
I've been able to be on it. Do you know what, though? I was just sitting there thinking we were all skeptical about big investments in football, weren't we? Into Newcastle, into Man City, and into these places. And we were talking about it's not sustainable to spend that amount of money on transfers and things like that. well, they're still here now. So this is what I'm saying about this guy. Is we might think at some point it has to dry up, but the reality is that I don't think that's for any time soon. I think we're going to see big nights. I think we're definitely going to see some more cock ups along the way where he's got it wrong. I mean, you can't tell a boxer that you'll no longer see a fighter go on a back foot. You can't tell somebody that can turn the corner and jab your head off that you're not going to be prepared to see that. But like I say, for me, is he good for boxing? He is right now. Is he good for the long-term vision of it? Is it gonna mess with the grassroots game? We've spoke about this before? Is it gonna mess with the domestic fighters that are willing to jump their career too quickly to get that one big paycheck and be on one Saudi card and then never to be seen again? Bottom line is only time will tell. But for me, bring on the big fights.
Thank you, Brett. Wonderful for you to give us your time yet again for this series. Thank you very much. I'll see you soon, mate. All right.
Keep smashing it, Mr. Neutral. You're killing it, buddy.
Thank you, mate. Wonderful stuff. He touched on something there for me, Ra, in his closing statement about the way where I was talking about a measure of control, and now that Turkey Al Sheikh is setting conditions in the ring. Is it things like this that put off the fans, or does it empower the promoters to keep just basically run with what he's saying?
To be honest, as Bud Crawford said, I don't think most fighters are ultimately going to change their style, not top level fighters anyway. And I mean, once they're in the ring, they're going to do what they've been doing through their careers. So fighters aren't going to be changing their styles just because he says so. I mean, look, you will get situations where fighters with a boring style aren't going to get the call from him, but that's the same problem fighters have anyway. I mean, we follow the sport in depth right down to the grassroots level. How many super talented boxers have fallen out of the game just because they had a boring style and couldn't sell tickets? But in terms of ability, they could have been, world champions. I mean, that's actually very common in this sport. So I don't think that's particularly any different. I think a bigger problem for him in being a success is the wider sort of social and political issues in the kingdom. We've seen how he's trying to make the sort of media sphere his own in-house sycophants only. There's, media restrictions from anyone who he deems to be, critical. Saudi Arabia is still a very authoritarian state, despite the speed of liberalization. And we touched on this last time, that's a big factor in preventing fans going there in large numbers. As mentioned, Americans generally don't travel to exotic locations. So I don't think that they'll ever tap into the American market very deeply in terms of bringing visitors to the kingdom. As for Europeans, I mean, us Brits, when we go on vacation, we like to let our hair down. I mean, if you're having to look over your shoulder because of overzealous security, as we have experienced, that will put people going there, put people off going there in any sort of large numbers. Now, I mean, things might change more. As you know, this is part of the sort of wider development, around some of those other projects like NEOM and the Red Sea project. If the laws in those resorts are, further liberalized and alcohol's allowed, that sort of thing, it could change.
That's the plan. They're making zones.
That would effectively then be the new venues for the boxing then, rather than Riyadh. So I guess in that sense, it could be sort of like a Las Vegas of the Middle East.
Yeah.
So they've got 5 years to get that.
Just let me jump off the back of what you were saying there, just to give you the folks an idea of why it's failed up until now to get tourists, especially boxing fans over there. What you're seeing now for me, having looked into this PIF fund and the Sovereign Wealth Fund and the overall aspects of GEA is not to sell you a one-off boxing event. No, they want you there a week before and a week after, because the projects like the Red Sea project, the Neom line where they got the 2034 World Cup and they got the stadium on top of the line. Then we come to the city of Qadr, which is the size of Vegas, by the way, and it's just everything's in it. So they don't want you there just to go and fly over for one day. They want your tax dollar. They want you to stay. This will be the new place to go to for your vacation, where they will have liberal laws relaxed. And I get what you're saying. They've tried some will say they've tried too much too soon in their social programs, and liberalization of the country. But I have to say, the progress they've made since 2016 to 2025 is nothing short of a miracle in that country, from the hardline conservative rulings that they've had in the past. MBS has come in and he's completely, in his vision, has completely seen the bigger picture. He's studied, he's been to America, he studied there. He sees how America works. He sees how the entertainment industry works and what it needs on a social level. So they've got all that in mind. However, the old saying comes into mind. You have to crack eggs to make an omelette, and they're going to have problems. There's no imperfect, or there's no perfect way that you can get all this within a short space of time, like 15 years, for up until the 2030 date, at which they want to realize their total ambitions in the entertainment industry. So they don't want you there for a day. They don't want you there for a 3-day vacation there for your weigh-in, your press conference. You've seen yourself, Ra. Give the idea, just as on a scale, what you're seeing in 2024 and 2025, just how much effort and the production they're putting into Fight Week. Now, you imagine that when Qadr is done, Red Sea project is done, amongst the 13 other entertainment projects within the country. When that's all done in 2030, my God, this place will be the Mecca that we've all been asking for.
Yeah, the only thing is, are there enough hardcore boxing fans to make a significant sort of part of that tourist industry? I mean, it's all very well the World Cup, because the amount of football fans dwarfs boxing fans. It's a mainstream sport. Boxing generally isn't, apart from a couple of guys. If you were to walk down the street and ask them, do you know who Nick Ball is? They won't know. Wouldn't know that he's a world champion, for example. So that's my big issue, purely in terms of the boxing. Why I'm skeptical that they can last, that they have the sort of long-term staying power to this degree. I mean, I think that they'll probably be involved for, they're a new player permanently, but if you're talking about the sort of several big boxing shows a year with enormous purses, like I said, there just aren't enough hardcore boxing fans. Because when do British fans ever travel in large numbers for a boxing match? The last guy that could do that was Ricky Hatton when he went to Las Vegas. But it was only only the 2 fights in Vegas against the 2 pound for pound greats, Mayweather and Pacquiao. So there's that. You've got to have the right opponents. Also, Las Vegas is somewhere where you can go, as I said, where Brits can let their hair down. Unless, as you said, unless the speed of the liberalisation continues apace, I can't see them being that lax. I mean, I can see alcohol being allowed on their resorts, but can't imagine them allowing Brits to turn the Red Sea into, an Arabian Magaluf, for example, which means there won't be the mass numbers of visitors for boxing. But as you said, with all the other things going on around, maybe boxing will then just be seen as as a supplementary sort of bit of entertainment around everything else that's going on.
That is the nail on the head. At the moment, it looks like the whole thing depends on boxing. Boxing is a very minute part of this project of $1.2 trillion pot to build the infrastructure. They've already spent that. They got to spend it again. The problems they have in country with the finances is their oil reserves are actually falling, and so there's a bit of pressure there to get this turned around and turn around quickly. And I'll just give you an indicator of just some of the figures involved here. In 2018, they had 700,000 visitors to Saudi Arabia, and most of that was from neighboring countries. In 2025, 22 million visitors overseas come to Saudi Arabia. They want to double that by 2032 to $44 million. So they've already transformed 3% of their GDP away from oil. All right. Well, it's not as much as they wanted, but it's a hell of a lot of money that's gone back into the country and back into tourism and these projects and these infrastructure, because that's what they want to do. They don't want to be reliant on the country to continue the infrastructure. They want private investment, and they want this all to marry into the whole project, because there's going to be partners all over the world in Saudi Arabia, entertainment companies, etc. I mean, I wish I could describe the scale of this to the fans at home. You have to go and look up Qiddiya, the Red Sea Project, Neom, all of that on YouTube. It's all there. Go to GEA and look at the videos on YouTube. They're absolutely amazing what they're going to do. And when you get the idea that boxing is just it's a pebble, it's a grain of sand on the beach of what they're going to achieve. You get the sense that this is not going to be a make or break it. But what I think is this is just a massive marketing tool that they're pumping all kinds of money into to use boxing and other sports like Formula One, the World Cup, golf. That's how. And can you see the element, the elitist element that they're looking for to rival Dubai, to rival Bahrain and Abu Dhabi? That's the model, but they don't want to be Abu Dhabi. They don't want to be Bahrain. They want to be something so much bigger. And I get it. I really do. And do you know what? I can only applaud it. And the massive task that this man has in hand. Let me go to some of the comments, please, Mar, before we continue. There's been a lot of action in that chat, and I want to see where we can go. Let's answer some of the questions here. I want to go back to Josh here about David Benavidez. Do you think, rather, if we talk boxing just for a minute here, that this spectacle between David Benavidez and Anthony Yarde, is it going to go the way that they're seeing, that people are saying on the timeline? I say Benavidez, overall is going to win this fight because Anthony Yarde's got gas tank issues. What do you say to Josh here?
Yeah, that's a reasonable take. But then again, Benavidez has been down against lesser punchers than Anthony Yarde, hasn't he? They both bring something that the other hasn't seen before. But you'd have to, I guess, make, based on recent form, Benavidez the favourite. He's got the better wins at the top level. And Anthony's had a couple of lackluster performances of late. But I don't think Benavidez is an overwhelming favourite. I'll tell you what, though, going back to what I said about how some fighters are resistant to Riyadh season, and we mentioned Benavidez as being one of them. Yeah. Isn't it odd that none of the fighters or their teams have published anything about this fight being? The only people that said anything is Ring Magazine. Now, does that mean it's not actually locked in? Because usually fighters and their managers or promoters will publish it at the same time that this is on. Radio silence from them. So
absolutely nothing from Benavidez, nothing from Annie Yard, nothing from Queensbury, nothing from PBC or Samson Lekovic. Samson Lekovic, I mean, that's another thing. Samson Lekovic swore he'd never go back to Saudi Arabia with David Benavidez.
Exactly. So
here it is. You know, it's real strange. And this, for me, there's some sort of code of silence right now between promoters and fighters when it, you know, and I think that is a consequence of not only the New York card and, you know, all this talk of he's not breaking the market in America. I get the sense now that Turki Al-Sheikh wants to center operations now that we're into July. He's coming to the end of the summer off season, and he's going to be going into Riyadh season. He's got, I think, these fights that are planned for November. There's something that's not, I wouldn't say sinister, but there's a code of silence going in the background. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. Again, I think it's the duplicity that promoters are employing, which they've always employed. I think they want to keep him in their back pocket and be on good enough terms that when it suits them, they will make a fight with him at exorbitant costs, of course, whilst actually still wanting to maintain their overall independence. Another PBC fighter that seems to be playing hardball is Carlos Adames, if we're to believe what Janibek is plastering all over Twitter. He's saying, I've signed my...
People are saying lies. It's all lies.
But Adames, when he wants to, he's quite active on Twitter. Now he's gone silent. So there's odd stuff going on, as you said. I guess PBC, Top Rank, all the promoters, when it suits them, they will be trying to shake Turkey down for more money. And I'm sure Turkey knows, he knows that there's all sorts of power plays going on. I'm sure he's not a fool. He knows that people will be trying to hold out for more money with him. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see who blinks first in this.
I mean, let's not pretend that Canelo is not the crown jewel right now in the GEE crown, right? He's got Canelo, that big diamond, you know, that's at the front of the big star of Africa. That's shining bright right now. Rumors are incredible amounts of money for a 4-fight deal. He's into his second fight now. Is once that fight deal is over, does he look to the next star and he looks to Tank? You know, Tank has resisted all this time. He's loyal to PBC, swears down on it, but money talks.
Yeah, I mean, Tank's already 30-something, so another year or two, maybe he'll be more amenable to come to the negotiating table. But again, I still go back to this. How much is it worth his while trying to invest so heavily into trying to capture any of the American market? Because a genuine American star will still be able to make more money just staying in America than however much the Saudis are willing to sort of overpay them to go over there. So is it ever worth their while, unless you're in a situation like Canelo where he no longer wants to fight his hardest opponents at his division, and might be getting these big overpayments from Turkey for fighting lesser opponents. Such as, well, I say less in inverted commas. I still think Bud Crawford beats him, but Bud Crawford isn't as dangerous to Canelo as someone like Mbili or Pacheco, for example, or Osles Iglesias, my particular favourite of the upcomers. So yeah, Tank eventually might come round, but again, a lot of the upcoming young talents in America, will they want to fight sort of in front of sort of empty arenas and what have you, especially
They're
if
not
say
empty arenas no more, really, are they? They have been filling the, albeit with cheap tickets and that, but
yeah
they have been steadily, improving their attendance figures in there. And there's been more Brits going over, and that was going to be another point. Do you think that he's seen the futures market here when it comes to centralizing operations from Saudi Arabia, just by purely the fact that America's actually getting less and less champions right now? The champion basis was a lot stronger 3 years ago than it is today, and there's been a bit of a power shift in the boxing world. From west to east. You look at the map.
Yeah, as we mentioned last time, he has come in at the right time in boxing history because of that decline in American power, in particular the prestigious heavyweight division. So with more heavyweights, top level heavyweights coming from sort of Russia, Central Asia, as well as, of course, ourselves. We're in the midst of our own heavyweight golden era. They're geographically located better in that sense. So, putting on those big heavyweight title fights, he's well positioned. And people like to say the Russians, they're already used to going to the Gulf for some winter sun. Not Saudi Arabia up till now, more obviously Dubai, but it's in the region. So Russians, Central Asians, and Europe and Africans, the Arabian Peninsula is right in the middle of all of that. So yes, although I keep emphasizing that the American market's not a good one necessarily for them, it might not matter as much. Well, as you said, it doesn't matter as much as past eras.
Absolutely. Just thinking about that Red Sea project, and enticing tourists. I mean, again, that's something you guys need to check out on YouTube, and you'll get who they're trying to attract. Who are they trying to attract for a 2 weeks of your life to make that Saudi Arabia one of your holiday destinations in your calendar in the world? And coming back to the boxing bit, is that I was talking about the Crown. You've got Canelo, and then he's got some lovely smaller diamonds in Bud Crawford and Shakur Stevenson. He seems to be adding to that stable. Devin Haney, Brian Norman. He's got Top Rank working with him. He's got match for him. The only real resistance I see right now is from PBC. But again, they're a strange entity. You don't know where they are. They're standing in boxing from 1 minute to the next because of the promoter or management company status, whatever they want to call themselves. The overall pack, I don't think they're looking, as I said before, they're not looking for people to fly over from America to stay there 3 days. They want serious money who are boxing fans, but not only boxing fans, because I can see one day they're going to put basketball there, they're going to put baseball there, they're going to put American football there. The universe is their ambition. It really is. And they want to, want for a better word of it, they're going to steal your national games away. And I mean, look what they've done with soccer. They brought it all the way over to Saudi Arabia. They made the World Cup there. Qatar had it 8 years ago, wherever it was. So, they're building that peninsula into a massive, massive mecca of entertainment. And not only you can imagine going to a boxing match, and then 2 days later you're going to Formula One, or you can 3 days later after that you're going to watch a golf Masters. It's going to be a bundled type entertainment package that not many people are going to resist, especially after you watch that Red Sea project. Oh my God, the ambition is unreal. But getting back to the boxing once again, and this element of control that I am focused on now, because I feel that Turki Al Sheikh, when he said back in 20, I think it was 2021, no, it was after COVID, 2020, I'm going to fix boxing. It's broken.
Mm.
Right. I think he's doing a very, very good job of it, considering the caveats and obstacles or obstacles that he has to face, not only from a social reform level, but to break into boxing in the manner that he's done. I mean, I have to applaud. I have to applaud the ambition. As simple as that. Yes, he's not going to be perfect, but can we agree that he is going to put 5 years' time? He's going to put boxing in a place that's is going to be far better than it has been. Well, since we can remember.
No, well, it is in a far better place than we can remember now. I mean, he made the undisputed heavyweight championship. We crowned Usyk the first undisputed champion in close to 30 years, and of course, Bivol Beterbiev, we crowned that first light heavyweight undisputed champion. So,
Al Canelo,
it is better, yeah. But again, it's just I still think it's a temporary thing, because at the same time, if there's fights that we the fans want which doesn't suit him, they don't get made. So, he's talking about Fury coming back and getting a third go on Usyk. I mean, certainly amongst the hardcore fans, we don't want to see it. If you're talking about in terms of the sport from a purely sporting point of view, Fury doesn't deserve another chance at the heavyweight title. So he is, in that sense, he's no different to any other very powerful promoter, in that he'll put on the big fights if it suits him. But as greedy boxing fans, of course, we always want new, fresh fights and challenges. But he is sort of keeping a lot of these aging fighters on the roster, probably for longer than they should be. I don't have a problem with that in itself if they were just fighting each other, but allowing them to constantly get back into the title picture, for example, when there's all sorts of young talents waiting for their chance. In that sense, I think he's no different to when Don King would say block certain fights because he didn't want his cash cow to be eaten.
Yeah. Perfect example here is Joseph Parker. From recollection, the WBO have been waiting for a mandatory as far back as Zhang when he was in it. So getting these shots is proven very difficult. However, the English are daft. I want to say that first and foremost. This is not against you, Rob, but the English mentality when it comes to boxing is really quite something else, because you mentioned the word Fury and AJ, and there's a frenzy. That gets me. So can you blame Turkey for tapping into a frenzy? Look at the way that Eubank and Conor Ben, when an egg got thrown. Next thing you know, that fight's gone global, worldwide, viral. Fury is quite capable of bringing the money in, as well as his opponent, whether it be Usyk or whether it be Dubois or whether it be AJ. The problem is that this man's got demand, and whether we like it or not, whether he deserves it or not, the power broker in this situation is looking at there's money to be made here. Is he any different from Eddie? Is he any different from Queensberry, PBC, Golden? No, he's not.
No,
But I just think he's getting really good at it now. and hence all the backlash. But if you take yourself back to 2020, I think it's 2023, the hand holding, Eddie, Queensbury, then you had Golden Boy, blah blah blah, right? I'm seeing behavioural changes amongst the promoters with Turkey, and there's none of that anymore. They're hardly in the same space anymore, if it's not for a press conference. So when you put all that together, Mr. Neutral comes up with the word control, hence the episode. I'm starting to get this element, feeling that he is starting to, let's say, irritate the powers that be. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, going back to how we started the show, I do think that there are moves, albeit silent moves, to resist his attempts to controlling the sport. And I think that the sport is so convoluted that I don't think he will be able to, even with his enormous financial muscle. Even if the GEA and MBS told him, look, just spend as much money as you want from the national treasury to get control of this sport, I still think he won't. Because, again, the Benavides situation is the example I'll give you. You'll get a situation now, I can see, where Benavides is seen as the real light heavyweight champion of the world in America, because most Americans don't know who Bivol and Beterbiev are. Yeah. And he'll be marketed that way. That's what PBC can do with Benavides. And then you'll effectively get a situation that we've always had, i.e., in one part of the world, people think their guy's the world champion, and in another part of the world, the fans will think their countryman's the world champion, and it will be difficult to make that, that unification or that undisputed until circumstances align properly. Same with, Tank Davis resisting things at lightweight. You'll get Americans who will always say, "Oh yeah, well, Tank's the real champion." I mean, who cares what title someone won over in Riyadh? What do they know about boxing? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and we've already seen even the WBC and WBA, despite being sponsored supposedly by Riyadh Season, they've had tensions. Was it at the publicity event for Canelo and Crawford when Turkey told them, leave the WBC belt out of the photo shoot, and then the next day you had Maurizio telling all these WBC champs to make a point of saying how proud they are to be WBC champs. So even if he succeeds with all of these boxing leagues and creating undisputed champs and what have you, it won't be long before the fragmentation starts. One governing body or another will crown a new champ. If that champ has sufficient popularity in a certain part of the world, or they'll claim to be the real champ, and you'll just end back the same situation we've always had. Now, I think it's just way too complex, way too convoluted. He's too green. He's too inexperienced to navigate the politics of the sport, even with all of that money. So I don't see him ever getting that total control. Like I said, I just see him becoming a power, and he'll have to compete for influence with the existing powers.
Brilliant. Thanks, mate. Let's go back to some of these comments. Bivol is the real champ, says Jams. We won't say what he said before that. Pacquiao with Barrios springs to mind. We were talking about old champs coming back. That's some of the levels that boxing's going to. Is making fights like that in America, and that for me is an indicator of this power struggle, which they're having with Turkey right now. And I do believe it's behind the scenes. I mean, at the end of the day, Some things they don't want to publish, some things they do. I get it, but it's not always sinister. I just think it's a stage, and now in the vision of Saudi 2030 that they are where they want to be. Right now in 2025, with 5 years to go, they're on course. And what could be in 5 years' time, we'll have to have another conversation, Ra, and we'll revisit this series, because a lot can happen in this time. I do get a feeling that a power shift is moving strongly towards Saudi Arabia. And hopefully as fans and as boxing, and even going down to grassroots level, if there's in the next 5 years, if there's incentives put in many countries, courtesy of GEA and Turkey Al Sheikh, then many people and lives, and cost incomes will be very grateful to that, man. But listen, Rat, we've come to the end of the show, an hour-long special of Riyadh season, a different angle, Mr. Neutral. And my friend Ra from Punch Out Boxing, thank you very, very much indeed for being a part of this. I might have another show next week to see how we get response, because I'm going to put out this on X, and I'm going to tag a few people in it and to see what the powers that be think of what we've been discussing tonight. But I want to thank everyone in the chat for all your comments. I see you all there. I see you, Lamont, DJ Pat, Hawkan, Ringside Live. Joshua, thank you very much for coming through all your comments. Very much appreciated to all of you. Please give us a like and subscribe, guys, and big up to the 505, and watch out for that watch party. If you haven't got your tickets, please visit 505 on X and get those tickets. They're absolutely a tremendous event. If you're not going to the fight itself, go to the next best thing. But look, Red Corner Boxing is sponsored by EasyStorage.com for all your local and nationwide storage needs, and Octagon Blog. We're very excited to announce our partnership, and we will be signing a clothing line deal. Yes, you heard it straight here. An announcement on Red Corner Boxing. Look at that. Red Corner Boxing will have its own jacket line. We will be signing a deal with a factory that makes Louis Vuitton stuff. So it's got to be quality, but we'll be giving out price lists, and we can do logos and everything, all cater for all your boxing needs and that. But you got to check out. It's going to be a tremendous venture. We can't wait. Right. Once again, thanks, mate. I'll see you for Prediction League, but this is Mr. Neutral. We'll see you next time.